Joining us live in studio, Reniva Fourie is with the SACP, Central Committee member and head of the Secretariat. Sfiso Mahlangu, AN7 residential political analyst. Tepo Khadima, political analyst. Mzwane Lemanyi is the founder of the Decolonization Foundation. And you at home are most welcome to give us a call. The lines are always open. Good evening to you and thanks so much for joining us. Do you feel, or does these sentiments resonate with you with the MKVA and some factions in the ANC saying that the SACP has essentially broken the trust of the organization?
Thank you, Cindy. Of course, we feel that we are still very trustworthy. We have kept mum on many confidential meetings. We've never divulged the discussions. The only reason why we divulged it now, and we didn't even divulge all of the discussions, but only one small aspect of it, was because it was already in the media. It was being discussed very widely, very broadly, and it was being projected as if the SACP had leaked it, and it certainly wasn't us.
Okay, but with the various options that you have, I'm sure you would deliberate on these things. Having a press conference is a logistical process. You have to invite the media, etc. So there's quite a lot of thought that goes into it. And over and above that, you would also consider the consequences or what the objectives of that press conference is. It doesn't seem like it was essentially just to clear up a misunderstanding of whether it was leaked or not. So what do you think?
I think the press conference was very planned and orchestrated manipulatively to deal with President Jacob Zuma. And every 5 years this happens in this country, and the SACP attempts to break ranks from the ANC. It's not surprising because people are looking for positions post-2019. They've got mortgages to pay, they've got school fees to pay, and so align yourself with the leader that's coming in. So maybe deal an ambush with President Jacob Zuma and pick a side so that you know that in the next administration you are safe politically. But today's presser was not just a decision, a spur-of-the-moment decision to communicate with the country. They had planned it. Mr. Bladen Zimande's statement at the funeral, and I attended the funeral, was very direct. In fact, it seemed to pave the way for Mr. Kgalema Motlanthe to read the open letter. Mr. Kgalema Motlanthe then said in the end of his speech, he's wondering why that letter has not been responded to. And my feeling was this is an open letter. It was not directed to President Zuma directly. Everybody in the country saw the letter. And if you write a letter to me and you post it on Facebook, you shouldn't expect a response from me because you've written it to the whole country. So the SACP has taken a stand. That press conference was against Oak Bay investments. It was against the Gupta family. It was against the Zuma faction that's within the ANC. So it was their attempt to show Mr. Ramaphosa and whoever will come that they have dealt with the current president and assign themselves as a new group to which can be reformed within a new faction of the ANC post-2019.
Just your response to that.
It certainly was not our intention at all. The call for a press conference was more aligned to a sincere commitment to openness and to honesty, and not necessarily to align ourselves with any particular faction. But also we were saying that we need to elevate engagements, and if the ANC is serious about unity, then it must be willing to reflect honestly and openly around issues, and that is also why we are calling for the Imbizo, because we believe that that is one platform where we can internally engage on issues and confront a lot of the misunderstandings and even some of the realities directly.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, you put your case forward based on whichever advantage you want to put yourself in. Primarily, if in this case the vociferous support for Pravin Gordhan and the maligning of Brian Molefe based on a state capture report that's inconclusive, and the attack on the Oak Bay and the Zumas. I mean, Solima Paila really made a meal of the cameras and the microphones today, and it can't be seen necessarily as something that is altruistic in the interest of protecting South Africa, the Constitution, and all the other bile that we often sold. Mzwadele, what is your take on it?
Yeah, look, I think I must say I was not only shocked, but I was seriously disappointed I have known the SACP to be one of those disciplined organizations. I'm not so sure if we understand things the same way. Here, the SACP, what they've done, they have breached the confidence, not just of an ANC president, of the head of state. This matter that they broke about is a head of state matter. It's not a Luthuli House matter. It's a head of state matter that they've breached. To be taken into confidence on matters like these, and then you go and have a press conference, I think the word irresponsible is a serious understatement in terms of what has happened. Not only did they do that, then they go further in terms of even undermining the constitutional rights of Honorable Brian Molefe. Honorable Brian Molefe, as we see it here and now, in terms of the constitution of this country, has to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. Now, to then say somebody has got a cloud over his head, yet this person has got no adverse findings on him in terms of the state of capture dossier of Madonsela. There's no adverse findings. How do you say a person like that has got a cloud over his head? So I really just think that what happened today was the saddest day in the history of this country. Such a disciplined organization to do such an ill-disciplined activity and disparage the names of honorable people in this country. I was really shocked.
Yeah, the whole idea of unity in action as part of the alliance and being part of the, a very crucial material stakeholder to restore the movement, all of that doesn't seem to gel.
One last point. I think let's not confuse alliance issues with state issues. There must be no confusion here. If this was some tiff around ANC as in Luthuli House and SACP and whatever, it's one thing. This is not that. Here we're talking about government matters. This is a very different thing. It was totally out of line for people to be shared with state information in order to ensure that there's smoothness in the country, and people abuse that.
Yeah. What is the entitlement from SACP to be engaged at that level and to know which minister is going to be appointed or removed? What does it say in the agreement with the alliance as to what influence the SACP has?
Well, we have to speak about the Constitution, and it is not provided for in the Constitution. What the SACP did, they just threw this country deeper into a constitutional crisis, and a constitutional crisis that was unfortunately started by the very ANC itself. We'll remember that in December last year, after that failed mutiny, after that failed coup within the NEC, and the Secretary General of the ANC, Mr. Gwete Mandashe, went on television and told the whole nation that there is nothing that the president could do against the mutineers unless they consented or unless they so approved. That threw us into a constitutional crisis, because the Constitution of the Republic is very clear as to who has the powers to constitute cabinet and government, and that is anybody who holds the position of president. But we mustn't read this in isolation, by the way, that the move by the SACP today during their press conference, one would have hoped that they could sustain, in fact, on why they believe that Minister Pravin Gordhan is doing an excellent job. Minister Pravin Gordhan is not doing an excellent job, and they could not give the facts to contrary on a number of fronts that we've already spoken about, and maybe tonight they can give us. But however, the issue that needs to be taken into account is this. This president and future presidents, unfortunately, have now been bequeathed with a situation whereby they are nothing but figureheads, and that is against the Constitution of this republic. So the citizens of this republic who vote with the understanding that these are the powers, functions, duties, and authority of the president, today, if at any other point in time they had a doubt, they now know for sure that you have a figurehead. If President Zuma is once again not able to act as so empowered by the Constitution, it therefore means that we no longer have a constitutional democracy, because the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, but it has henceforth been subverted.
I mean, President Zuma hasn't abandoned the cabinet reshuffle plan per se, and should he do so, that would take away the executive authority, as it were, of what he wanted to do in terms of what the likes of the Progressive Professionals Forum had spoken about the lack of transformation, or that there's a hindrance from Treasury to do so. Do you think he's in that catch-22 situation right now, or is it pretty much clear that the plan will go forward?
Well, in response, I just wish to make two solid points. Number one, I don't think we should confuse the presidency with the tripartite alliance or with an alliance partner. An alliance partner is a partner of the movement. It isn't entirely the ANC, it isn't cabinet, and for goodness sake, it isn't the presidency. I do believe that the presidency, in remaining the head of state, has the right to make the decisions that any head of state in any constitutional democracy has the right to make. And I think taking on a Marxist approach to politics and saying, well, we are an alliance and so we've got to be consulted with, is important, but it shouldn't override the authority of the president. I don't think that the SACP was consulted on every member of parliament that represents the ANC. I don't think everyone needs to go through the process of scrutiny and vexing with the SACP. That would be an outrageous thing to subscribe to. And so why do they want that suddenly with Mr. Brian Molefe? And so if the SACP continues its communist agenda, or says to us that they are indeed a communist party that exists in 2017, that must be heard when we discuss land in this country. We want to hear a communist voice. When we speak about free education, we want to hear a communist voice. When we want to talk about a state bank or a black bank in this country, we demand to hear a communist voice. And we shouldn't just hear about communism when we speak of 2019, or when people should ascend to parliament and then suddenly people are saying we're going to pull out of this alliance and collapse government. I think it's a very dear threat. And to suggest even further, Cindy, and say, well, we've seen the intelligence report, and then call a press conference and describe an intelligence report from state security, I think that compromises the security of this nation, and it's something we don't expect or should appreciate from a communist alliance partner of our government.
Well, we'll give you an opportunity in a moment. Njabulo Nzuza is the Secretary General of the ANC Youth League. Thanks so much for your patience, Njabulo, and thanks for joining us. You're saying that relations have really been severed here with the press conference by the SACP.
Yes, the problem is that we no longer have communists in South Africa. We have a South African Communist Party that masquerades like communists, whilst their agenda is to ascend to government positions. And today proved that correctly. Because we've been having calls for free education, the SACP has never even made one submission to the Commission of Higher Education on issues of free education. There has been issues of land in the country, about it going back to the people. The SACP has been quiet on those issues. There has been the issue of the State Bank and its establishment. The SACP has been quiet on those issues. We have not seen the SACP on intellectual, ideological discussions and debates that have been happening in the country. What do? They come in and they tell us that they try to hamstring the president from doing a cabinet reshuffle. I think we must remind the country that President Zuma extended an olive branch to the SACP because previously, under the leadership of Thabo Mbeki, they were never even once consulted on issues of cabinet positions and where people are going to be deployed. But today, when we are strengthening relations with the alliance, never have these relations borne given so many fruits. But what we see today is a problem with the South African Communist Party. I don't think that they really thought that issue through. I don't think that they applied the correct tools of analysis before going to that particular press conference. And we reaffirm that no one can tell the president what to do in terms of reshuffling and restructuring of cabinet. When people are consulted, they are consulted to add their views, whether they are taken seriously or not, which in this regard, I don't think they should be taken seriously.
All right, just your response, Reniva.
Cindy, I think firstly we should begin by not pretending that the issue of the reshuffle and the intelligence report emanated out of today's press briefing. It's been in the media since Monday. So to try and assign that bridge of confidence to the SACP. It's really not fair, and it's also not accurate. Then secondly, the press briefing today was not necessarily about undermining the constitutional authority of the president, nor about wanting to interfere in his executive authority. It was instead about protecting the integrity of the state. And the SACP has been consistent when we were pronouncing on matters of corruption within the state, matters of abuse of authority, matters of inefficiency. We've been consistent. We've been a consistent voice in that regard. Linked to that, then, we are saying, what is the sudden interest now in wanting to access and control national treasury? And so the defense of Comrade Pravin Gordhan then is not defending him as an individual, but in defending him as the Minister of Finance and the protection of the Treasury.
Okay, let's, sorry, Renee, but this, just in the interest of time, responses from our panelists.
Yeah, look, very quickly. I think if there was even any other time whereby there was a doubt on whether consultation is the right route, now it's been proven. It is the most incorrect thing to do, is unconstitutional. But however, the point I want to deal with is this. The SACP has not been able to sustain, in fact, why they believe Minister Pravin Gordhan is doing a good job. He's doing a bad job. By the end of this year, Cindy, we will no longer be a sovereign state. We will be like Greece, we'll be like Portugal, we'll be like Spain, on the basis of the policies that the same independent national treasury has been pursuing even during the time of Trevor Manuel as a minister. That we have borrowed so much. We are one of the largest debtor nations in the world. This year alone, we are borrowing 149 billion rand in order to make up for the 169 billion in interest payment. It's a fact. Next year, 2018 to 2022, there's a series of bonds that were raised by this very same minister we are talking about, which he has made no provision whatsoever on how he's going to redeem those bonds when they mature. It simply means this: we are going to be run by the money lenders. Our constitution will henceforth be suspended. You need a minister who can be able to cut with a chainsaw the debt levels that you have. You need a minister who can have the gumption on the economic policy and legislation, particularly about PFMA, which is a hindrance and an impediment to economic growth, because the state cannot intervene in a manner that it requires, as and so is needed. On the other hand, you need a minister who's got the gumption on tax reform. So that these are the issues that even G20 meeting raised this very 2 weekends ago, and the same minister was in attendance. We are one of the largest debtor nations. Deficit financing is a failed policy. Therefore, the SACP need to answer us on that. And on this so fateful trip that was called short, what we want to hear, what we want to see, is the prospectus that this minister was going to be discussing with the so-called investors. And who are these investors? We want the name. We want how much funds they are managing. We want to know how much funds they have left to invest. Those are the details that can tell us on whether he's doing a good job, and that is missing. If they can give that, we would agree.
Here's a scorecard. Here's a scorecard. SACP is here. I don't know, beyond the fact that the minister is probably a Communist Party member, what is this good thing that he has done? Number one, even the projections last year, he projected that we're going to have a growth of something like 0.9% of the GDP.
1.8 at the beginning.
0.8. And then what we ended up with is 0.2. I'm even surprised that Sunday Times gave him an award after such a dismal performance, number one. Number two, we again have, in this country, have had a serious issue around bank collusion, as it were. After that bank collusion, we've never had the minister in his budget speech making any strong statement to condemn this atrocious issue of bank collusion. Lastly, in this year, the number of, last year and up to now, the number of people with irregular expenditure, all departments, it just shows that the national treasury systems of financial controls are just totally inadequate for the challenges at hand. Year in, year out, we're sitting with billions and billions of irregular expenditure. This all points out to poor performance in national treasury. Lastly, this department has been the department that has, under Pravin, that has ensured that National Empowerment Fund is throttled. This is the fund that was meant to push black business, fund black business. They have throttled it, and they've never given it a cent for the past 5 and more years, and we're sitting now with a situation where it's now getting collapsed into IDC, all due to the failure of Praveen and his team to fund black business. This shows that National Treasury does not want to support black business.
Yeah, but Siso, for the benefit of our viewers and South Africans in general, in having to decipher all these issues that happen, as they say, there's no chill in this country. You know, in terms of who's pushing which agenda, with the SACP backing Praveen Gordhan, essentially saying he's the only man to save South Africa, and tainting Brian Molefe, that in itself is very biased or one-sided to benefit them, clearly. What do we make out of all the politics of the day, primarily when it comes to the tripartite alliance and where it's going?
Well, the best way to describe it is electioneering. People have got to be elected, and you've got to push certain individuals and hold the president and the economy and the country at ransom. Otherwise, it would make no fact. If a person says, if certain movements are made within the government, I'm going to step out. The Secretary General of the SACP is also a cabinet minister, a member of parliament, the Minister of Higher Education. Shouldn't one then be exemplary and say, well, because I can't take this anymore, I'm going to leave? And then all of those who are in government within the SACP must just pull out and say, well, we can't work with this anymore. You know, let's go and stay home, so that other people who are perhaps even more capable can be appointed. But what is wrong and unfair, the atrocity is that you will hold the president and even the party you claim to love at ransom to say, if you don't do what we want you to do, we will pull out and you're going to lose the vote of no confidence that the opposition parties are tabling against you. I don't see where the alliance is. The statement and the speech that Mr. Blednzimande made in Soweto on the 5th of January, the 8th of January, is not the statement that he made yesterday. And to cry out and say this is the year of Oliver Tambo and the year of unity in action, there is no alliance here. So if people are not protecting their own pockets and looking out for their jobs, and you think your relationship with a certain party is not working out, why don't you just pull away and say, I'm not in the alliance, or I'm not a cabinet minister anymore? You can't expect people to resign, but you don't want to resign. That shows a poverty in one's spirit and in one's mindset, and that's something that I think South Africans should be very cautious of.
And how do you deal going forward with this trust deficit, clearly, in what is an untenable, to use your word, Tsepo, a situation now clearly playing out in the public display, which side, whichever group is going, or the factionalism being perpetuated? How do you go forward in this alliance?
Our commentary over the past couple of months, and particularly today, is indeed to do with electioneering, but not with electioneering with inside the ANC, but it's to do with 2019. And we're saying that there's a growing distrust amongst our people in the capacity of the ANC-led government to deliver, and therefore the decisions that is made around the composition of the state and who is our cabinet is very important. And it's very important that the face of cabinet represents integrity and represents delivery. And that has always been the interest and the agenda of the SACP. We most certainly are not aligned to any faction. And we don't think that the actions today is going to break the trust in any way. I mean, I've been communicating with leadership of the ANC all of today. And we know that robust, open discussion is always appreciated.
Yeah. I mean, you could have released a press statement. And by the way, I'm not by any way suggesting to prescribe what the SACP could have or could not have done today. But I mean, the ANC clearly, MKVA, saying there's a trust issue brought about by this public display of tarnishing the organization.
We've been in engagements with MKVA as well, not today, obviously, but before, precisely around protecting the integrity of the state. So they do know that we come from a good space, that our interest most definitely is unity. Our interest is ensuring that a progressive government is in power in 2019. And if the ANC continues to make some of the errors that it's making, and even when we discuss it behind closed doors, they still perpetuate it, the sentiments that's being expressed today is a reflection of of the perpetuation of a perception that the SACP is pushing a factional agenda, even when people know that we are not. The comments that were made by Njabulo, he knows that it's not true. He participates in the forums of higher education. He knows that we are there. He knows that we articulate around that. He knows that we have policy positions. Likewise, around the issue of the banking sector, the transformation of the financial sector. It's well known that the SACP has been having a campaign. So, in my opinion, I'm thinking that some of the commentary that is emerging today is also just politicking, and that it's not really substance, because from our space we think that the priorities right now are of such an urgent matter, such an important matter, that we can't undermine the quality of the engagements. And if people want to pretend that what we did today was from a position of opportunism, I want to very strongly dispute that.
All right, let's get in Njabulo. Yeah, and Njabulo, just to respond from Reniva. Hi, Njabulo. All right, we'll try and get him back on the line. You still there? All right. We'll go.
That's exactly what it is. It's opportunism. In fact, what SACP sought to do today is to turn President Zuma into a puppet. How do you do what they've done? It's really despicable what they've done today, because what they have done, they have taken a rumor, they have upgraded a rumor into a fact. Because the fact that, I mean, I've heard that weak excuse that was said in that press conference that this thing is doing rounds. A rumor is a rumor, and it remains a rumor, and nothing gets seconds. Even the markets don't work too much on the rumor. But to take a rumor and take it into a next level, make it a fact, and quote the date and time where you've met the president, it's no longer a rumor, it becomes a fact. They have breached the trust of the president, they have breached the trust of the nation. I don't think anybody going forward should ever trust SACP with anything. It means you have a situation here where you have leaders that are expedient, leaders that are opportunistic, leaders that are ready to breach the confidence of the head of state. I mean, this is really untenable.
Look, the issues are bracing on macroeconomic policy and in terms of the functioning, the ongoings of National Treasury and its approach. I'm challenging SACP, if not tonight, at some point in time, to revert to the nation and explain, and I'm telling you they're going to have a difficulty. They cannot sustain that this minister is doing a good job, Minister of Finance. If there was any doubt that he should be fired, now that doubt is gone. He must go on the basis I'm saying, because we will not be a country. The man who was buried yesterday, Ahmed Kathrada, whatever he spent 26 years in jail for, has just been sold by this minister. We are no longer a sovereign country. But however, I want you to think about this, that what Mr. Julius Malema said today when he was announcing that he's going to approach the Constitutional Court for an impeachment order, which absolutely is legally absurd, it cannot happen. But what he did confirm is what some of us have known for some time. He now says that in fact there's 80. We knew that for some time. There is 65 ANC MPs who have their vote has been secured to vote with opposition in the next motion of no confidence. So everything else that is being done here is a choreography, is a dress rehearsal for the architects of regime change who have now secured the necessary numbers. Mr. Malema is telling us that there is 80 ANC members. Now, curious out of the SACP statement today was to say that they will withdraw their members from cabinet. So that confirmed that they have got their own cabinet, they've got their own caucus in parliament, and they've got their own NEC within ANC NEC. Now, if they find it so egregious what the president seeks to do in terms of the constitution, why are they not withdrawing those members out of parliament? No, because they are part and parcel of those 80 members that Mr. Malema is speaking about, that they will be supportive of this coup, the bloodless coup, which can only happen anytime from the 10th of May, because the 9th of May, the 6 months since the last motion lapses, and the rules of parliament, which they have put in place, is that they can only table a motion of no confidence every 6 months. So be assured that today was nothing but a dress rehearsal for a regime change, and if anybody doubted, be prepared. and be worried.
We'll get the SACP to respond that there was nothing noble, as Tsepo is saying, about their press conference today or actions leading up to it today.
I don't know why people have become so particularly intimidated by Mr. Brian Molefe. I don't know. Maybe the SACP can highlight us on that. But the reality is that the SACP did not screen everyone that went to Parliament. In fact, it's not their responsibility to screen everybody that goes to Parliament. In fact, even they would love to have parliamentary positions themselves. And some of them are leaders and some of them are cabinet ministers. At the last statement that they made when they had a press conference, Mr. Nzimande said they were not consulted on Mr. Brian Molefe going to Parliament. I then posed the question to him to say, are you consulted on every person that the ANC sends to Parliament? And he responded no. But this morning, Mr. Mapala said they knew about Mr. Brian Molefe going to Parliament before the State of the Nation address, and because they didn't want to destabilize the State of the Nation address, they kept quiet and did not respond to the president. So back then, Mr. Nzimande said they were not consulted. Today we hear they are consulted. In fact, why do they need consultation, if one may ask? Because many skeletons, even within the alliance, would come out. I don't think Mr. Brian Molefe has been charged or found to be guilty of any crime. And if you want to use the document or the dossier of Ms. Thuli Madonsela and her alleged supposed remarks that she has made, I don't think that can be used against Mr. Molefe. So whilst that is true, I was questioning this morning to say, did they know or didn't they know that Mr. Molefe was going to Parliament? Because two-sided stories are coming from the SACP. In fact, then one should say, I don't think that after this they should be held trustworthy to South Africa.
In fact, I think it's actually the arrogance of greater heights for the SACP to say they were not happy and therefore 1, 2, 3. I think they must understand that even at an alliance level, the ANC is the leader of the alliance. There's no co-governance, as it were. The ANC is the leader of the alliance. ANC must consult, but it's still the decision of the ANC. The SACP is a party on its own. The ANC never interferes on the affairs of the SACP. Why is it that the SACP thinks that it must run SACP affairs and it must also dictate what happens even in the ANC space? I really think that the SACP must understand the difference between being consulted and permission being sought from you. The ANC does not seek permission from the SACP. It consults the SACP. SACP must respect ANC decisions.
All right, Njabula is back with us. Thanks, Njabula. Just we lost you a little bit there. Just to recap, in a sense, what I'm getting is that essentially the ANC is the landlord to the SACP, and because of today's developments, that it might be time to evict the tenant, which is the SACP, as an analogy.
Yes, the problem here is that the SACP is behaving in a manner that shows that it is now captured by white monopoly capital. I had initially put it to the table that they are not advancing the communist agenda in this country. However, they are more interested in terms of saving positions of those who serve in their central executive committee. What they were doing today is nothing but parading and playing chess to hamstring the president, as we had initially said. The other issue that we must deal with is that the SACP seems to be attacking people who have been in the forefront of transformation. The only reason Brian Molefe is hated in the country and by some people today is because he pursued transformation. He stabilized ESCOM, which today they want to take over using these independent power producers, of which that is a program that is being led by Pravin. And those things swipe at the face of radical economic transformation. They give us a slap in the face. The SACP has never been consulted during the times of Thabo Mbeki. It was an extension of an olive branch to them to say, look, we are alliance partners, have a relationship with the ANC, let us improve relations with the ANC. What do? They take private conversations and they make them public. I hear when they say that it was media reports. Media reports was nothing confirmed. But they went out there and solidified gossip that is out there. We don't even know as yet what the reasons for the president will be to reshuffle Pravin. For instance, I will say he has failed to implement the policy of the State Bank. I will say that he has failed to deal with the issue of Triple PF, and quite a number of other issues that Treasury has not delivered on. And those are reasons enough. Now they say, no, there is an intelligence report, which we have never seen as a country. How do you go on national TV and talk about intelligence issues and say then you are then positioned to run this country?
All right.
How are we gonna...
Sorry, Njabulo. Is the SACP going to make good on its previous threats to leave the alliance, go it alone? Are you going to fulfill those threats?
Okay, firstly, the SACP has always participated in the list process, and we campaigned together with the ANC in all of our elections campaigns. We also sit on the deployment committee. So to say that we don't have a say in the selection of members of parliament is not accurate. Then secondly, if there is going to be a replacement of the Minister of Finance, why not appoint a minister then that doesn't have any cloud over his head? It's true that there's no clear findings or negative findings against Brian at the moment, but there is this cloud over his head. Why don't we wait until all the allegations are cleared, until there's a thorough investigation? Surely there are other people who are equally capable of being the Minister of Finance. Then thirdly, I think that if Brian is going to be appointed as the Minister of Finance, it will be necessary for us to call an emergency central committee meeting. Not because necessarily that we have a problem with Brian as a person, but we would want to be arguing why is there such a major need for people who had been associated, and I'm not saying Brian here in particular, but people that had been associated with the most misappropriation of state funds. Why is it such a desperate need for them to have control over the National Treasury and to have someone who is more amenable to accommodating them through his historical practices within that position? And if we think that the seizure of National Treasury is for the purposes of looting, then it's definitely something that the Communist Party will be seriously debating.
All right, but just to look at who could possibly...
Yeah, this is very important.
And Mzanel, I'm getting to that, but I just want to put it into context, because this is what you hear generally. And if the tainting is going to be one-sided, you're not necessarily supporting the argument that there is a deliberate attempt to prevent radical economic transformation for the black majority to enjoy the prospects of this country. And you're only looking at Brian in the allegations made in the State of Capture report. Why is it that you're not looking where it is more meaningful, where a greater majority of the country can benefit?
No, I fully agree with you that there needs to be radical economic transformation. In fact, it was something that the SACP had mooted. I'm just saying, if we can demonstrate that Pravin Gordhan does have shortcomings, why can't we replace him with someone with an equally credible reputation that equally has the skills to drive economic transformation? Why does it have to be Brian?
I just want to know, what is this misappropriation of funds? Where is this looting? Can you just explain who stole what where? That you are saying now Brian is associated with misappropriation of funds and looting. Who has looted
Let's
where?
have a thorough investigation into the State of Capture report, and let's see if there's any merit to the allegations. Definitely from the SACP side we have proof, and we have indicated that we are willing to submit that proof. And in fact, we've given it to the President and we've given it to the Secretary General.
Why?
There was a State of Capture investigation that was run by the Office of the Public Protector. That did not implicate Mr. Brian Molefe in any crime. If Mr. Molefe was implicated in a crime or fraud or whatever in this country, I assure you the Democratic Alliance, Freedom Under Law, the Helen Suzman Foundation, the EFF would have taken him up. So I don't know how we can sit and then call for another investigation, and if you're not happy with that investigation, we should just call for another one until you are satisfied with the candidate. I didn't know that the SACP is the one that chooses the candidate. No. Should we then call the SACP and say, well, in that case, they are the presidency?
Here's the important thing. The SACP, as you see it here now, has just confirmed that it has broken the law. It has broken Parker Act, Section 34, which says that if you have information about corruption and so on, you have a duty to report that to SAPS. It's very clear, not to anybody else, but to the police. They are sitting here with information of corruption, and yet they have not reported this to the police. They have broken the law. They actually should be criminally charged.
I actually just want to go back, Ravina, in terms of many ministers in cabinet falling short of glory, and I'll go through the list with Dr. Nzimande's wife at the time being accused of corruption, and which was linked to her tenure at the SABC board. WC Jonas himself was accused of misappropriation of funds while he served as MEC for Economic Development in the Eastern Cape. Tula Sinqesi himself, SACP leader, had to answer to irregular spending in the Nkandla matter as part of the advisory committee, and I can go on. So the point of saying that there are skeletons in Nyana, but the Brian Molefe one is the more glaring than what other ministers are that could be suitable for Treasury leader is not correct.
I think our people deserve a clean state. They deserve a state with, or a leadership with integrity. And
no, but let's just go back. I mean, these are, you're working on allegations,
yes,
nuances, etc. I just gave you other similar cases where corruption had been implicated or suggested in terms of the leadership of the SACP. Nothing came of that, or maybe some investigation, but obviously the ministers still serve today. But you choose to rather brush over that and focus on allegations based on Brian Molefe.
The response is not necessarily about Brian. The response is about who controls National Treasury and what the intention is around wanting to have access to those funds. And we're saying that whoever is the Minister of Finance must demonstrate that he is capable, that he has absolute impeccable integrity, and that the funds of the state is going to be protected and that it's going to be spent efficiently, effectively, and in the interest of the people. And we're saying that currently, just as you might have, you've mentioned there are other people whose names are tainted, and maybe the President must reflect on whether he wants to retain them or not. But we are also saying that currently Brian is tainted. Let's try and put someone, particularly in National Treasury, who's not.
Tainted by what?
Cindy, let's say this. The SACP is having a difficult time. This is Mount Everest without an oxygen mask. They're trying to climb. They're going to faint. It is absolutely absurd that they can suggest that this person is less qualified. There are 249 ANC MPs in Parliament. At least the least they could have done on Monday when they met with the President and disagreed with his suggestion that these two should be removed, but in the event he went ahead, they should have given him at least 2 or 3 names out of the 249 who have got those impeccable credentials that they demand or that they are looking for. But let's look at Mr. Molefe, for example. Mr. Molefe's career started at National Treasury. And Mr. Molefe's career, when he was running the Public Investment Corporation, in fact, during that time, it was one of the most activist shareholders in the country, and they were able to drive change and transformation in corporate South Africa, which is resisting transformation. Mr. Manyi here can confirm he comes from that world where he has experienced it firsthand in various capacities, the lack and the resistance to transformation. But Mr. Molefe was able to drive that. And at ESCOM again, or even at Transnet, Mr. Molefe's credentials speak for themselves. But if we say the type of a Minister of Finance you need is somebody who understands the capital markets, both equity capital markets as well as debt capital markets, Mr. Molefe understands that more than any of the 249 or more than any of the 400, by the way. More than any of the 400 who are in Parliament, Mr. Molefe has a better understanding and experience. And if you need somebody who can be able to decisively deal with the issue of debt, where we need to refinance our debt, cut the debt drastically, and refinancing to save at least 80 billion. Those are the numbers that I've done. We can save 80 billion rand in interest payment in just simply go in that direction. Why is this minister not able to do that? But Mr. Molefe can be able to do that. So if anything, we can speak on, for Mr. Molefe because his credentials, his track record speaks for itself. However, what the SACP needs to do is to tell us, well, since now they are seeming to be consenting that Mr. Pravin Gordhan is not doing a good job, who is there to replace Mr. Pravin Gordhan, who has got those credentials that are acceptable to them.
I just want to know from the SACP, why is it that they think we must take their word and not the Constitution? The Constitution says presumption of innocence until proven guilty. That's what the Constitution says. Now, why is it that the SACP has got a problem accepting the Constitution of this country? Why should we take their word? The Constitution says, I'm innocent until proven guilty, but they're saying guilty until proven innocent. They say, clear yourself before we deal with you. In other words, they're saying you are guilty, prove yourself innocent first. They are violating the Constitution of this country.
For me, just for clarity also, in the fact that the over-reliance on the state of capture report, which we know had essentially proposed a further judiciary inquiry, proper investigation until verdicts and convictions can be made, that we still focus on this document that essentially just gives us the next step, what to do in tarnishing people's names and using it to now lobby for another candidate, in this case, the finance minister.
It's not, my personal intention was not to tarnish Mr. Molefe, because I do know him quite well. But we are saying that the state of capture report does recommend further investigations. And so why are we so afraid to let those investigations take place? Why is the need for Brian to have control over the National Treasury so very urgent and critical? It's then on the side of the SACP, it then gives credence to the fact, or to some of the evidence that we have, that of course needs to be further investigated to be demonstrated as fact, but it gives credence to the aspersions that the need for certain people to control the National Treasury is to loot the state. So if there is no intention to loot the state, let the ANC then appoint someone that is acceptable by the entire alliance.
Okay, it could be, let's use loot the state, maybe a different phrase, and say to enforce or realize the economic radical.
No, there's no way you can equate the two, because look,
No, I'm saying let's replace loot the state with the intention for radical economic transformation. And let's just hypothetically say that this would then, with the shift of ministers, would allow for us to realize the dream of an egalitarian society where black business would be allowed to thrive, where policy would be sensitive to the conditions of black people in the main, and that we can still maintain our international standing as a country that is good for investment. Why is that not possible?
Look, everything that you've outlined, we certainly support. We were the ones that championed or coined the term radical economic transformation. We're just saying, why the desperation for the person to drive it to be Brian?
We are desperate to have a change at National Treasury for one simple reason. By the end of this year, we will no longer be a sovereign state. We will be controlled by the money lenders. That is a fact. I want anybody to come up and need National Treasury to try and challenge it. They cannot. We do not have enough money to service our current interest. We don't have enough. By the end of this year, we'll be controlled by the money lenders, and we don't even have enough money next year. So that's why it is urgent that we must have wholesale changes at National Treasury, because they have failed. What they have done, they have mortgaged the future of our grandchildren. They will wake up in a country whereby the Constitution is suspended and we are run by the money lenders. King Solomon said it right. He said that the borrower is a servant of the lender, and that's what we have become. How can anybody in this country who is really acting for the interests of this country clap hands when somebody says, look, I'm mortgaging the future of your children? What kind of a society is that? We need change now.
We're sitting with a 2 trillion rand debt as we sit here now, and the trip overseas was to get us into even more debt. As it were. What kind of performance is this? And we're sitting here, like Comrade Nzuza was saying, with a triple PFA, a policy that continues to advance the interests of white monopoly capital. And Pravin does not want to change this thing. It is busy with regulations that are not going anywhere near this. But the important thing, I want to know, why is it that the SACP did not cooperate with the public protector and submit the information that they're sitting with? Why is it that they're sitting here with a dossier of wrongdoing? They didn't take it to the police, I really need to, there must be on record as to why is it that they're sitting with factual information of corruption which they have not raised with the public protector, which have not taken to the police. Why are they sitting with such information?
Have principles been compromised generally, I suppose, on all the political strata?
Yeah, I think with respect, and as we continue to speak about Mr. Molefe, if the SACP has not been consulted, the president did not tell them that he was going to appoint Mr. Brian Molefe as our Minister of Finance. I think it's very dangerous to be a communist and a rumor monger in one sentence when one listens to rumors to say, well, we think he might appoint Mr. Brian Molefe. For all due reasons, Cindy, what if the president were to appoint someone else or someone that is for radical economic transformation? Why have organizations in this country and also the SACP surrounded themselves with this ideology and this symbolism around Mr. Brian Molefe? It might be someone else. And in fact, I don't think anyone should be pushing a Molefe trump card. We need a president in this country, a finance minister in this country who will push for radical economic transformation. The president is there. We're looking for a finance minister who can do the same. I don't know where they heard it to say Mr. Brian Molefe was set in his boots as the Minister of Finance. I think it's crude to be listening to rumors and trying to run a country.
But he'll do a great job if you're
He's the best we have. Then we have to go along.
First, from a qualification point of view, he would be one of the most
Sorry,
qualified
Zanele, I just need
ministers.
to, Ravina, very briefly, your final comments with regards to suggestions of possible prospective future finance ministers that will appease the SACP. Otherwise, you'll walk out.
We're having a Politburo meeting tomorrow, and the report from the bilateral will be tabled at the Politburo meeting, and then we will certainly be coming up with recommendations of names if that was a request that emerged out of the bilateral. With regards to the walkout, that is a decision that only the Central Committee can make. And there has been a feeling amongst some of the leadership within the South African Communist Party that if it is someone that is associated, that if the appointment is someone that is associated with looting of the state through various mechanisms, the SACP can't associate itself with corruption, and then it will have to review its participation within government.
All right, I wish we had more time, but that's where we're going to leave it. Thank you so much indeed, Raniva Fourie, SACP Central Committee member and head of the Secretariat, Siso Mahlangu, residential political analyst, Sepo Khadima, political analyst, Mzwanele Manyi, the founder of the Decolonization Foundation, and thanks for you at home for joining us. We also had Njabulo Nzuza, Secretary General of the ANC Youth League. Up next, Clive Ramatibela Smith with BizPulse.